Okay, can you see my slides now?
Yes, I love this service and cannot thank my school enough. That I get every semester.
Awesome. So once again, I'm Lauren Lobdell. I am the Director of Client Services at Tutor.com. I work with hundreds of institutions across the country to offer Tutor.com services. This comment you see up on the screen is from one of those schools. So Tutor.com as a partner of your institution, obviously we want to make you look good. So one of our hopes will be to see Penn State Lehigh Valley students saying very similar things once we actually get the Tutor.com service off the ground. Yeah.
Can you tell me where you are geographically at the moment? Are you in Pennsylvania or where is Tutor.com?
So our headquarters are in New York City. I live in Denver, but right now I am in Connecticut where my parents live, visiting them for the weekend. So, so we actually have people all over the country that either, we have people that work in corporate, and then we have a whole group of us like myself who are in kind of sales, client services, that work all over the country. We are also a part of the Princeton Review. So that's actually our company name is the Princeton Review, and Tutor.com is a product of the Princeton Review. So we have field offices throughout the country as well where they do test prep and tutoring to be, good at the SAT, the ACT, the GMAT, all of that stuff. Okay, so it sounds like there's some working knowledge of Tutor.com in the room today, which is great. What I want to do is just sort of give you a sense of what's going to be available, how it's going to work at Penn State Lehigh Valley, just give you kind of a bit of an understanding of how our tutoring service works. And then I'm going to give you a perspective on how it can actually be very helpful to instructors. Do a little demonstration, probably mostly through slides for the, just to kind of stay on time here. And then touch on some of the reporting that you as the instructor will have access to. And then just wrapping the session up with thinking about how you can help to make sure your students actually use this service, know what it's all about. So we'll kind of do that. And then any questions you have, you're welcome to ask throughout the session. I'm going to shut my video off because it's distracting me. So hopefully that's okay. Okay. So just to get started here, I do have another comment from a student. I always like to have you think about the service from the perspective of your students who may perceive tutoring very differently depending on their exposure to tutoring in the past. So you can see that this student had a really good experience. One of the best things they felt their college had implemented. You can see that student's had that sort of breakthrough moment, but she would recommend that you send out information to students because not everybody knows about it. So that's one of the reasons for instructors, I want you to kind of think about it from that perspective right away, because obviously you as the instructor can be hugely influential in making sure students have visibility and knowledge about this kind of service. They actually pay attention for the most part to what you say because their grade is, is on the line. So just want to give you a sense that many students, there's a lot of services out there, a lot of information, and sometimes it doesn't always penetrate. So that's kind of a good perspective to think about as you think about, where is Tutor.com services or tutoring more generally? How does that fit into what I'm talking to my students about and making sure they know that they have these kinds of support channels? So Tutor.com specifically is going to be your online tutoring provider. We also work with Penn State World Campus, just so you all know. So some of you, depending on your kind of connection to World Campus or not, may have heard of us. We are 24/7 on-demand access to online tutors. So basically through our technology, your students are going to be able to get connected to a subject matter expert tutor who we have done a very intensive vetting process to ensure that they are excellent, math tutors or writing tutors or, social science tutors. And so when a student needs help, they can just jump on the computer and they'll be able to get connected to a tutor who can help them within just a few minutes. All of the sessions are one-to-one, so these are real human beings on the other end that are waiting you know, to service your students when they're ready to sit down and get their work done. So for some students, that might be 8 a.m. in the morning, and some students, that might be 2 a.m. in the morning. The service is going to be really easy for your students to access as long as you have put the tutor.com link into your Canvas course. All they need is an internet connection. So they could be on their computer, they could be on their mobile device. As long as they can get to tutor.com through that link that would be in your Canvas course page, they will be able to get over to tutor.com and get connected to our service and to the tutors. So students come for a variety of different needs. Some like to come as they're working through every week, you know, weekly course assignments and needing help with that, with questions or writing prompts, or really just getting some kind of everyday practice. Some students come more when it's crunch time and it's getting to be an assessment or midterms or finals. Some of your students, and I don't have to tell you, some of your students are going to come not feeling very comfortable with maybe math, for example, or maybe they haven't written a paper in a very long time. So for them, it's really just getting themselves off the ground with whatever they need to work on. And some of them might just come for that basic kind of remediation and to talk through, how do I begin research, for example. So students are going to come kind of for a variety of needs to work with our tutors. And tutors can really kind of serve all of these needs because it is that one-to-one experience. What we've done is we've taken a look at your course catalog and then picked from our kind of book of tutoring subjects. We have about 50 different tutoring subjects, and said, here's what makes sense for your students based on what they're taking. So students will come into the tutor.com site and find tutoring subjects that are relevant to the courses that they would be enrolled in. And when they come over to tutor.com, they're going to work in a virtual classroom, and we have the classroom optimized for student experience. So I'm going to walk you through this a little bit more in detail, but they have all kinds of tools in the classroom to make it a very efficient session to have in an online environment. So that's kind of some bullets to take away about the experience from the student perspective. Just to give you a sense of kind of the range of subjects we're going to be covering for you. We have a series of math topics that will be available, science topics, history, there'll be some writing and business. So there's a whole, this isn't your exact list, this is our full list, but there'll be a variety of different topics that'll be available for students when they connect over to tutor.com. I think because I meet with and train a lot of instructors, and some instructors kind of want to understand, what does this kind of service mean for me? We have a lot of different services we offer on campus. So I think a good way to think about how tutor.com can be helpful to you is really just kind of another place to direct students for extra support, and also for human support. These are real people on the other end. We connect them through technology, but it is another opportunity, instead of sending students to, static resources or to adaptive tools. Those are all a part of a lot of students' experience, but giving them that human experience can be really important, especially if students don't have as much opportunity to come to campus, or maybe they just sort of, I know some of your students that come at night, for example, kind of work all day and then they drop, to campus for a couple hours. Maybe they can't stay on campus. So this kind of gives you some extra reach, and also helps you, because I know many of you are teaching multiple courses. You have a lot of students to juggle. Also, for those students who really are kind of coming to you maybe a little behind to begin with, it's a good tool to send those students to kind of get some remediation. So if you have a student who says, I don't feel very comfortable with math, I've never really done this before, it's a good place to send them to just work on kind of basic concepts. We see this a lot with writing, for example, students who are just really uncomfortable with beginning the writing process. So it can be a good tool to send them to go brainstorm ideas, figure out how to start research, outline a project, etc. A couple of reporting pieces I'm going to share with you in a few slides here that you'll have as the instructor. We want to give you information about how the students are doing in the sessions, in case you as the instructor of record might be able to add some extra support for that student if they demonstrate that they might be struggling. So we have some reporting layers that are going to help you identify and spotlight certain students who might be getting extra help but still struggling, and then even looking at core topics. Where do some students that are coming to tutoring really seem to be getting stuck, and we want to give you a reporting that can kind of share that. We don't want the tutoring to be this black box. You send them to tutor.com and that information, you know, gets lost to you. It should be very kind of clear to you as the instructor what's happening. So we have, again, just to walk you through that student experience a little more clearly, is cross-device support. So a student who wants to get connected to tutor.com really doesn't have to worry too much about the type of technology that they're going to be using, because we're pretty broad in what would be possible for students to use to come to our service. So as long as they have that internet-ready device and an internet connection, they can get connected kind of on a lot of operating systems and browsers. Where they're going to get connected to tutor.com, and this is my own sample course page, but the basic premise is that you would add the link to tutor.com to your course page, as you see here. Sounds like one of you in the room has already done this, but we have it installed in Canvas. It's just a matter of you enabling it as a course tool, and then it's just one of the tools on the sidebar when a student comes into your course, and they will then launch over to tutor.com, and they'll have all the features that I'm going to walk you through over here that will get them connected to our tutors. For those of you who are instructors, we also have a special client portal that you'll have access to. So this view you're seeing here is actually the faculty view. It's the instructor's view when they click tutor.com right from the course. We recognize you as an instructor. We show you what your students see down the bottom, and then we pop this spotlight, this blue box up here, to allow you to go into more of the administrative side of things, so you can check in on how students are using tutor.com. More to come on that a little bit later, but just generally this is the view, and this is really important that you make sure when you go into your course that this tool link has been turned on. So when a student wants to actually get help, they're going to pick from this kind of, if I go back to this slide, they're going to drop into the site. The very first option is on-demand tutoring. They're going to fill out this little survey here, selecting what kind of help they need. So maybe they're in English, and they select English and writing. Maybe it's math, algebra, for example. Put in a question or a concept they want to work on. They can attach a file down here. So if they have a Excel file they're working in, or maybe they're working on their essay and they want to bring in a Word doc, they would attach that file, hit connect now, and they'll get routed to our first available tutor in that subject area. And they're going to meet with the tutor in our online classroom. This is the tutor.com virtual classroom. It's pretty similar to some other technology that you might have interacted with. Basic premise is they're going to be chatting back and forth here on the right-hand side. They have a chat box. They have a whiteboard on the left-hand side with some tools they can use to draw and map, you know, drag and drop shapes out on the whiteboard. So you can see here I've added graph paper to the whiteboard space, added an XY axis so that I could start to work on plotting points. In addition to using the whiteboard to do something like plot points, we also have a graphing calculator tool that I'll show you in just a second here. Another way they can communicate is also turning on audio. So if a student, for example, prefers to be able to speak to their tutor rather than just chat with the tutor, they can hit this turn on audio button, and they will be able to either dial into a conference line or just connect over their computer's mic and speakers, and they'll be able to actually chat with their tutor as they work together on the whiteboard space. Not all students choose to use the audio. Maybe they're in a maybe they're not in a quiet place when they choose to have a tutoring session. So that's why they have multiple options for how they can communicate with tutors. They also have a graphing calculator, as I mentioned, so you can always add different whiteboard types at the top of the screen here in the classroom. This is one of the types. So if a student wanted to plot points but didn't want to have to draw it out, we do have the ability for them to add the graphing calculator, kind of plug in formulas, and then it actually automatically will graph over here on the whiteboard space. This is really an efficiency tool. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Desmos, but it's the Desmos graphing calculator that's built into our classroom. And it just helps students to be a lot more efficient in how they can actually get the kind of more complex problems plotted and be able to discuss with their tutor rather than spending, 10 minutes graphing it out on the whiteboard space.
I had I had an organic chemistry professor. He's concerned with how students will be able to interact in organic chemistry because of the complex, models and things like that. Is there a tool in there that would help with it?
So this is where I'm not an academic, so I don't know enough about organic chemistry to know exactly what kinds of tools would be best for them if they're like actually doing calculations, so for me, probably it would be the whiteboard or sharing some of our websites or even bringing in one of our file types, as I'm kind of going to show you here, where they can be sharing collaborative material with the tutor. That's my best guess, but I can actually ask our academic team. We have a whole group of people who that's what they do, right? They're our academic people, so they would know a lot better. So I can ask that question. Kate, was that you who asked that?
It was me. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let me see what I can find out since, again, I don't know a lot about organic chem in terms of the actual work you have to do.
Well, thank you. I'll follow up with you afterwards then.
Okay. The nice thing about the calculator is it's also two-way, so anything the tutor puts in, the student can see and manipulate, and vice versa. And that's the same with the whiteboard space and some of these other tools I'm going to share with you. We also have a file sharing capability. So if a student is working on an essay, for example, they can bring the essay to the session, share it with the tutor. The tutor is going to broadcast it onto the screen, and then they're going to be going through different sections of the essay depending on what they need to work on. So maybe the student's in drafting mode and they really just need to discuss and outline where the student's going to go next, for example. Maybe it's getting more towards the final stages and the student really wants somebody to help make sure that they are, presenting a strong argument, they have a good thesis statement, maybe we're even at the point of checking citations like APA or MLA. So the writing sessions kind of have a broad options for what the tutor and the student might work on. They can also share other file types. So for example, if they're doing a presentation or they're working in Excel or they have some other, like a screenshot or something that they'd like to share with their tutor, they can bring in a variety of different kinds of file types that will then be, again, something they can both see and be working on together. Also for this purpose, we have, just to kind of make a simplified version of being able to share, bodies of text, for example, we have a text editor tool. So it's kind of like working in Google Docs, if any of you are familiar with that. But if a student just wanted to be able to easily copy and paste in some of what they're working on rather than having to share a file, they can just, copy in their first paragraph and really work with the tutor in a two-way capacity here in the text editor. So it makes it a little more easy to collaborate on whatever the writing is that they're working on. They can also share websites. So tutors have a whole inventory of resources that they sort of keep handy as they're working on sessions to help students if maybe they get bogged down and don't know how to do a linear equations problem. The tutor most likely has a resource that's out on the web that they could bring into the classroom to have a discussion, help visualize that kind of problem, and give the student kind of a takeaway from the classroom experience. So they have kind of like a handout. So this is just kind of one of the tools to make it very collaborative for the students. So you can see there's a lot of different tools in here, all built around helping to make it very highly efficient for the tutor and student to be able to communicate and share different kinds of material to help drive the session forward. Everything that happens in the online classroom gets archived to the student's account. So they have a little tab in their tutor.com account page that says My Account. Every session will get archived here under their sessions page. They also have the ability to save favorite tutors. So if they really like the tutor that they got the chance to work with, they can actually highlight them as a favorite and see when they're next on the schedule and even schedule appointments with that tutor. They also have a locker, and that's file storage space. So if they want to, save across multiple devices the essay that they're working on, they can save it to their tutor.com locker and then be able to pull it into the session when they actually get in session with a tutor. And this is an example of what it looks like when a student does pick up one of their sessions on their sessions page. You can see I worked with Rick, who's one of my favorite tutors. We worked in algebra, and I had a really good session. I gave him 5 stars. We worked on a polynomials problem, shared a bunch of resources that I could pull up because they are all hyperlinks. I can even replay that session if I want to watch it again as a video. I can read the session as a transcript and see all the images of the whiteboards that we worked on. You can ask the question again. You can even email the transcript to your instructor if you so chose. So they will have access to all of the material. You will also have access to their session transcripts as well, so you can see how students are doing when they're working with their tutors. So just to give you a little sense of who some of these people are, we have about 3,500 tutors at Tutor.com because we service thousands of sessions each day and around the clock. So, you know, if you're in the military, for example, we have a contract with the Department of Defense to service military personnel. If you're around the world in Afghanistan, for example, and you're wanting to get some extra help as you're working through some courses, you could be connecting to a tutor on, you know, local time over in Afghanistan, but it might be 4 in the morning over here. So we have tutors in every time zone in the country in North America, and they are going to be working every hour of the day. So here is one example of one of our English tutors. She handles basic English and literature and also essay writing sessions for us. You can see she has a background in English literature. We do not require that tutors have PhDs. All of the tutors that work with your students will have at least a 4-year degree, but they all have to go through the same vetting process regardless of their actual degree to be a tutor at Tutor.com. It's a very kind of rigorous recruiting, vetting process to even become a tutor. And then once they do become a tutor, we also have a very robust quality control process as well. So just to get you to the place of how you even get into the quality control process, when someone applies to be a tutor with us, they have to go through high-level subject exams to actually prove their subject matter expertise in that area they want to tutor in. We will then put them through a background check and educational verification. From there, they would go into a mock session with one of our mentors who pretends to be a student so that we can see that tutor's ability to communicate in an online environment. So once they make it through all of those rounds, we basically start with a big group of people that actually apply, and by the time they get through all those rounds, it's only about a 3% group that actually makes it through to become a probationary tutor. Then they would enter our quality control process. It's not as if they sort of fly free, if you will, once they become a tutor. We actually will assign them to a mentor. A mentor is like a senior tutor, excellent ratings, has very strong expertise in the discipline, and they will be overseeing that tutor, kind of like a lead faculty, I would say, to kind of be comparable. So from there, the mentor is going to be working with that tutor, monitoring their sessions. We also have some notion of automatic software flags. So for example, if a student comes out of a tutoring session and rates the session very poorly, they did not have a good experience, that would automatically go to our quality control team for human review. They also just kind of spot check transcripts as well. So then the mentor will take student feedback we've heard from the instructors maybe on campuses that we work on, and they're going to be providing all that feedback back to the tutor kind of in this cycle. And they also provide that tutor with resources. So it's kind of an iterative process where the tutor is always getting constant feedback, new resources, and so they can constantly be improving and developing as a tutor, which leads to having very strong ratings usually from our students. So we really rely on what your students say to make sure that our tutors are delivering high quality sessions. This is important too because we are serving as a vendor at your school, and we want to make sure that as an extension of your institution that students are highly satisfied and that our tutors are delivering really quality sessions that are really targeting the learning process. So with that in mind, we do have the tutors working, we have a dedicated kind of instructional approach that the tutors are going to be working towards in the session. It's really built around how people learn. And so the very first thing that our tutors are going to do is ask your students questions to figure out where they're having some insecurity and some gaps in their understanding of that concept. So we're going to start here with this, the more you know, because the tutor needs to understand what they don't know in order to start building upon the foundations of what they do already know, to attach meaning to whatever they're working on. Really importantly, in order for the material to kind of become something the student can learn, we have to make it relevant to the student. Now, fortunately, the sort of nature of an on-demand service that allows the student to bring whatever they want to the session, the relevancy is kind of already high for that student. But the one-to-one experience is really important for us in the tutoring sessions as well, because that allows the tutor to address and tailor the session to that student, make it really relevant to how that student is going to understand that material. The next thing is he who does the work does the learning, and that's really about tutors are not there to give answers. They're there to get the student to grapple with the material they've brought to the session. Part of the struggle of a student being frustrated is that they, sometimes want to just be able to watch the tutor do the work, but that's not going to help the student walk away with a better understanding. So the tutors are really going to lead the student, asking them questions, demonstrating, and then getting them to work through as much of the work as possible in the session. The classroom is really built with this idea of the brain loves novelty, and that's why we have all those different tools I just walked you through, is so that there's a lot of opportunity for the session to be dynamic and not just static. So the tutor can use the chat board and share websites and bring in files and use different colors. And so it's really about helping to kind of keep representing the material a little bit differently, because that does help stimulate learning. Additionally, these last two I think are my sort of most important parts of tutoring. Many students come very stressed out. They do not have confidence in themselves about how they can perform against the material they've brought to the session. So you hear students say things like, I can't do math. That's a very common thing that you hear people say. It's not that they can't do math, it's that we have to break down the stress. So tutors are going to, really be positive and encouraging and try to really simplify whatever the challenges that the student brought down to its parts, for example. So if they have a complex problem they need to work on, they need to break it out into smaller parts, celebrate victories even as the student works through one step. So from there, the idea of the session is that the tutor wants to get the student to a place of confidence. Maybe they aren't experts in writing by the end of the session, but they feel like they have new information, new knowledge, new confidence to at least go back and start some independent revision, for example. That's really the ultimate goal of the tutoring sessions and what the tutors are trying to get the students to do through some of these strategies. And the way that we measure whether your students find that effective or not is, again, through surveying of your students at the end of every session. So once they close that live session that I showed you, they actually fill out this survey right then and there. We get about a 40% response rate, so that's pretty high in terms of survey standards. So we have a lot of data to show what works and what doesn't. And this is where we can even drill down into our quality control process of making sure that your students feel good about the tutor they worked with. What did they think of the technology? How did they feel about it kind of more affectively? So did it help them with their grades and their confidence? And even that's where we collect those comments I shared with you earlier, is through open-ended responses. Now, importantly, we also share this information back with the school. So Linda, who's sitting in the room, or was before, will get reports that will actually show her all of the comments that students left and even the ratings they left on this survey. So she'll have a really good perspective on whether students find this beneficial or not, which I'm sure she can share with instructors as well. Okay, any questions about the live tutoring experience and how students are going to get to tutor.com?
It looks very straightforward. This is Margaret. I have a question about the business model for your company.
Sure.
I'm interested in how your tutors are paid, and is your company making money for shareholders, or is it like Penn State that is that is nonprofit?
Mhm.
.com looks like it's a for-profit.
We are a business. We are not a nonprofit. We are privately held, so we don't have shareholders. It's a privately held company. So, but yes, we are not a nonprofit organization. We do pay the tutors a range of rates depending on which tutoring subjects they are tutoring with us in. So for example, some of our more advanced areas, like maybe some of our finance and accounting, might have a higher rate than, say, algebra. But even within that, we have tutors have different levels that they can be based on their experience and how long they've been with us and what their ratings look like. So it's kind of a complex system of explaining the pay rates because it really is dependent on so many factors. But the tutors get to work from home, so it's a remote opportunity. It is a part-time gig, and they also get a lot of support. So when we do the same kind of surveying of our tutors, we have a very high satisfaction rate with a lot of our tutors as well. So we're not just focused on the student, we also are very much focused on tutor satisfaction as well.
So I guess to give me a sense of, I'm in English, and I know that there are more PhDs graduating in English than there are tenure track jobs right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I am wondering, if I quit my job as a tenure line professor in state and went to work for Tutor.com, would I be able to maintain my standard of living? Or if you look at it from the other side, the PhDs that are graduating, like my daughter, should she get a job at Tutor.com? Or I guess it sounds like this is part of the gig economy that is good for people that are young, without lots of bills and lots of energy.
To some degree, I think that that's true, but I would say that it's also something that, well, to answer your question, all of the tutors that work for us, it is not a full-time job for them, right? So it's a good job if you are an adjunct instructor, for example, which we have many out there who do this as a part-time opportunity to get some extra income. It is also something retired folks will often do, or we have stay-at-home parents, for example, and young people that are either pursuing their degrees or have just finished their degrees. So I would say that that's the bulk of the population. So you're right in the sense that this is not your full-time job. This is definitely like a part-time opportunity for individuals that want to tutor, and have it be a very flexible opportunity where they can literally work from wherever they happen to be in that moment.
Right. Well, it sounds absolutely marvelous for my students, and maybe I should stop there.
Yeah, and I mean, I can probably pull together some stats from the tutors as well, just to show kind of that flip side, that satisfaction. But our team that works and oversees the tutors and that whole quality control process I was talking about, they work really hard to make sure that it's a very positive experience for our tutors. Now, some people, maybe they don't like this kind of gig, I guess, to use your word, mentality. So maybe for them it isn't the most ideal, but it does seem to be very appealing to a lot of people in kind of some of those buckets I talked about, where, it's additional way to get income from what they're really good at already, and to do it in a very flexible capacity.
And I love it more than I love the people that are making their livelihood writing papers that my students contribute.
Yeah. And we do have a whole team that is full-time that oversees the instructional unit. So we do have some academics that are on staff professionally for their full-time careers as well, who oversee this whole process.
Got it.
So if you're ever interested in that, let me know. Okay, so I'm running a little short on time here. I just want to show you one final slide, and then I can send some of this material around. But I did want to just highlight for you, again, that as an instructor, that link to tutor.com in your classroom will allow you as the instructor to go in and just take a look at if any of your students are using tutoring, if they are using it, how are they doing? Are they having successful sessions where they're really understanding the material? Or in some cases, our tutors actually will highlight if they think certain students could use some extra help. So when you go into the tool, there's going to be some reporting in there that you can actually run and see which students are engaging in the tutoring sessions. And there's little early alert flags on the report that will show you if they are having any trouble. So for example, if they seem to have low prerequisite knowledge, the tutor will flag them for that. If they seem to have low mastery of that concept, even after working through the tutoring session, we'll highlight that for you on the report. And you can even dive into the tutoring session transcript and see where do they seem to be getting stuck. I know as instructors, you have access to the students' in-depth curriculum and to even knowing who your students are in a much more meaningful way. So you might see that, John Smith had a tutoring session and seems to be struggling. Maybe you have extra practice problems or strategies for maybe working with that student to even get them to a stronger place, or just to encourage them to even keep tutoring and keep kind of grappling with the material. So for instructors, you do have this as a resource for you as well in kind of seeing how students are doing. And if no one's using tutoring, it can kind of highlight for you maybe doing some promotion around some of your challenging assignments and topics and exams. Okay, any final questions? Because I think my time is up here.
I actually went in on the student side just to see what it was like. And it was right there. I clicked on it, it was right there. I thought that was really great.
Great, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lauren.
Kate had to step out, so thank you so much, Lauren, and you'll be able to follow up with her. The links.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Everyone have a good rest of your day.